So as the U.S. government shutdown enters a fourth week, the second longest in history, Oregon's Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley took to the Senate floor all night to protest President Trump.
Is it okay for mass federal agents to arrest people off the street because of their skin color or their accent? No way, not in a free America.
Merkley pointed to the Trump administration's previous halting of research grants for universities, as well as the deployment of National Guard troops to Portland. Merkley began speaking at about 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time yesterday. His speech lasted more than 17 hours. Since Trump became president this year, Senate Democrats have engaged in several marathon speeches to protest his actions. And the government shutdown has frozen the Small Business Administration's lending programs across the country. The impasse is blocking around $2.5 billion from being dispersed to nearly 5,000 small businesses. The agency said small businesses in California are suffering the most, with more than $126 million not approved every week of the shutdown. This was followed by Texas, with loans of more than $88 million blocked each week. Florida is losing loans more than $76 million. But Administrator Kelly Loeffler said small business confidence is at a 7-year high. She cited President Trump's agenda to end unfair trade deals, cut regulations, and reduce taxes. And the president responded to reports that he may seek compensation from the Justice Department for past investigations against him. Trump said yesterday that the agency owes him, quote, a lot of money for those probes. He added he would have the final say in the payout. Here he is.
I don't know what the numbers are. I don't even talk to them about it. All I know is that they would owe me a lot of money, but I'm not looking for money. I'd give it to charity or something. I would give it to charity. With the country, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the decision, right? And, that decision would have to go across my desk. And it's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself. In other words, did you ever have one of those cases where you have to decide how much you're paying yourself in damages? But I was damaged very greatly, and any money that I would get, I would give to charity.
A New York Times report claims Trump is seeking up to $230 million from the DOJ. The report says Trump filed the suit before winning re-election. It's related to the FBI's 2023 raid on his Mar-a-Lago estate, where agents searched for classified documents. Trump has admitted those documents were there, but said they were legally allowed under the Presidential Records Act. The suit also reportedly mentions the probe into alleged collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia. The New York Times says both cases are being handled through arbitration. That process aims to limit public lawsuits by settling early. Several follow-up investigations, including those led by several special counsels Robert Mueller and John Durham, found no such evidence of collusion between Trump campaigns and Russia. Durham's report said confirmation bias was the main reason the investigations began in the first place. And moving on to the 2026 midterms, former Republican Senator John Sununu is running for senator in New Hampshire again. Sununu announced his campaign today and said that he wants to lower the temperature in what he calls a dysfunctional and angry Congress. Sununu served one term in the Senate from 2003 to 2009. He then lost his re-election bid in 2008 to Democrat Jeanine Shaheen, who now represents the Granite State but will not be running next year. The RNC considers Sununu a strong candidate. They say the seat in New Hampshire could be competitive as the party looks to hold its majority in the chamber next year. Sununu will face former Senator Scott Brown of Massachusetts in the Republican primary. Sununu's past opposition to President Trump could be a problem for him, though, while Brown has closely aligned himself to the president. And federal immigration operations erupted into chaos on both coasts. Protesters clashed with agents in New York City, and gunfire broke out during a traffic stop in Los Angeles. Here's more.
In New York, a routine immigration enforcement sweep on Canal Street in Chinatown quickly escalated. Federal agents with ICE and Border Patrol moved in on street vendors accused of selling counterfeit handbags and electronics. Within minutes, crowds gathered, shouting and blocking agents' vehicles. Homeland Security later said the operation was part of a broader crackdown on sellers of counterfeit goods. DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin said agents arrested one person for assaulting an officer, but New York Mayor Eric Adams said his city was not involved in the immigration operation. He said that undocumented New Yorkers trying to pursue their American dreams should not be the target of law enforcement, and resources should instead be focused on violent criminals. While New York saw street protests, Los Angeles witnessed gunfire when a traffic stop turned violent. Officials say 44-year-old Carlitos Ricardo Parias, an illegal immigrant who had previously escaped custody, tried to ram his car into officers as they attempted to arrest him. The DHS says officers followed their training and fired defensive shots, and the man was shot in the elbow, and a U.S. Marshal was shot in the hand by a ricocheted bullet. Both are in the hospital. Parias faces one count of assaulting a federal officer. He has a considerable social media presence. According to local media, he has regularly documented federal immigration operations on his TikTok account and has more than 100,000 followers. McLaughlin has defended her agency's approach to immigration enforcement, saying officers aren't just going after random people.
When we say we want the worst of the worst out of this country, it's not just a talking point, it really is what it is. That's who we're going after. And these are not indiscriminate stops. We're not just walking on the sidewalk and picking up random people. We have intelligence, we have reasonable suspicion under the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. That's who we're going after.
The Los Angeles shootout and the New York protests come amid a surge in hostility toward ICE officers, something President Trump's border czar Tom Homan told Newsmax is being fueled by divisive rhetoric from politicians and activists.
I think it's the cartels, but I also think it's the rhetoric, especially from elected mayors, elected governors, and elected congresspeople who want to compare ICE to terrorists and the Nazis. The far fringe on the left that become violent against ICE, they feel emboldened when the United States senator or a congressperson or a governor says ICE are Nazis and they're racist. That emboldens them to take more action against ICE officers.
Homan also said cartels are taking revenge on ICE by using internal gangs in the nation's largest cities to attack officers. According to Homan and the White House, attacks on immigration officers have risen more than 1,000% in the last few months.
And a man was arrested yesterday after crashing his car into a security barrier outside the White House. This is according to U.S. Secret Service. The incident occurred around 10 p.m. last night at one of the White House entrances. Secret Service officers took the driver into custody immediately. Investigators later searched the vehicle but found no threats or hazardous materials. Authorities haven't released the driver's identity or provided any details about a possible motive. Millions of Americans could see changes to their food stamp benefits this November. The new One Big Beautiful Bill Act updates work requirements, eligibility rules, and funding levels for SNAP. That's the Federal Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We speak with Robert Rector of the Heritage Foundation about what these changes mean for families and states. Robert, thanks so much for coming on. The new One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it updates work requirements for SNAP recipients. How will this affect working-age adults?
Well, it will have a minimal effect. First thing we have to understand is the United States has a massive welfare system with over 90 programs spending $1.7 trillion a year. That doesn't include Social Security and Medicare, and provides cash food, housing, free medical care. This is one tiny change to the food stamp program. The main emphasis of this is that people that are getting food stamps who are adults, who are able-bodied and work capable and don't have any dependent children will be required to be employed, or if they don't have a job, to do some sort of minimal activity to prepare for a job. That will, in fact, probably significantly reduce the rolls because when you put that type of work requirement on, most people just drop off the rolls because they already have a job that they haven't told you about or something like that.
Explain that last part to us, Robert. What do you mean?
Well, if you have a job, you're in employment, that will significantly reduce the amount of food stamps you can get. So one typical thing to do in most welfare programs is to simply work off the books or not tell the welfare offices you have a job. So if you have an individual like that and you require them to, say, come into the office 1 or 2 days a week to do some activity in the office, they can't do that there. They can't be 2 places at once. So all those people with hidden jobs, which is a significant number of people, they just drop off the rolls. It's a historic thing that you find in any type of welfare reform. It happened in the 1990s with welfare reform under Bill Clinton. One thing we want to emphasize is that this provision is not to just say, well, you don't have a job, so we're going to throw you in the street. It's saying, look, if you don't have a job, we will support you, we will feed you, but we expect you to do something to begin to support yourself and to try to find a job. It's a very modest proposal, but it will have significant effects in the sense that it serves as a kind of gatekeeping device to make sure that the people who are getting aid truly need the aid and are doing something to try to make their own lives better and to increase self-support for themselves.
So you're saying, Robert, that previously people, they had jobs, they told the government that they did not in order to get more subsidies, SNAP subsidies. Are you saying that now perhaps they will just admit they have a job, but their subsidies will be lower?
No, they just, when you ask them to come in to do something, they're not going to show up because it interferes with their job. They can't be two places at once. This is a universal feature of a problem with welfare in every single nation, that people hide their income in order to get more benefits. And a work requirement weeds that out, because it says, look, if you say you don't have a job, we'd like you to come down to the office here on Tuesday and do some activity with us. Maybe we'll work on your resume or something like that. And if they have a job, they won't do that. So the net effect when we put this type of work, the only people that are being affected by this are able-bodied adults who don't have kids, okay? They're not disabled, they're not elderly, they don't have children to take care of for the most part. They're just single adults, usually who are living with other people that have income in the household, and they're not working. There are about 4 million of them on the rolls right now. And you don't want to just kick them in the street. If they need assistance, you want to give it to them, but you want to make sure that they're not just taking a free handout if you have one. So what you do is you say, look, if you don't have a job right now, we'd like you to come down to the office for maybe one day a week. We'll work with you, do some job preparations, or we'll watch you search for a job under supervision. We're going to basically say you can't just sit on your couch at home and collect these food stamp benefits. And what you do, when you do that, what you find is the overwhelming number of people in this group that you put that type of requirement on, they simply drop off the rolls immediately because they have other ways of supporting themselves, because they have a hidden job, or because they just don't need the benefits as much as you might think. If a few of them do come in and say, I can't find a job, but I really need these food stamps, then you really want to help those people. You want to help them get a job. You get to focus your energies on the people who really need assistance, rather than just giving free food to those people who are willing to take a handout if you have it for them.
Robert, you said this will apply to about 4 million people, if I'm not mistaken. Any idea how much this will save the government?
There are significant savings in this, but in the overall size of the welfare system, this is a very, very small change. And the problem is, this rule was actually put in to food stamps way back in 1996 with Bill Clinton's welfare reform, but there are loopholes in it so that particularly blue states have never enforced this rule. The rule has kind of been on the books almost for 30 plus years now, but it's never been enforced because of the loopholes. This bill will tighten up some of those loopholes so that you do have to enforce this requirement, which again is not new. It's been around since the 90s. It's just never been enforced. Now we're going to say we're actually going to get rid of those loopholes so that states have to enforce this. And what you will do is you will promote people who are simply sitting around doing nothing. You will help them get a job. You will encourage them to get a job, and you will save a significant amount of money for the taxpayers.
Robert Rector, thank you so much.
Thank you.
President Trump is heading to Asia. He's confirmed several stops on his upcoming tour, where he's expected to discuss trade, investments, and regional security. NTD's Daniel Monahan takes a closer look at the trip.
The first stop of President Trump's Asia trip is Malaysia, which is hosting the ASEAN summit from October 26th to the 28th. That's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Trump is expected to attend on the first day. Malaysian officials have said that Trump is looking forward to joining the signing of a ceasefire deal between Thailand and Cambodia, one of several peace deals Trump helped broker. Conflict between Thailand and Cambodia broke out in July. 43 people were killed and 300,000 were displaced during 5 days of fighting. Next up is Japan. Trump is scheduled to travel there on October 27th for a 3-day visit. The trip will occur just after Japan's parliament elected the conservative Sanaya Takaichi. Takaichi said that the Japan-U.S. alliance is the cornerstone of Japan's foreign and security policy and that she plans to strengthen ties. She is expected to meet with Trump on October 28th to talk about regional security. Japan has seen increased Chinese military activity around its territory in recent years and ramped up joint drills with allies, including the United States, in response. The country signed a trade deal last month that lowers tariffs on Japanese goods to 15% in exchange for $550 billion in investments in the U.S. Then comes South Korea, which is hosting the APEC summit from October 31st to November 1st. Trump is expected to visit ahead of the summit from October 29th to the 30th. Trump is expecting to meet with Chinese Communist leader Xi Jinping while there. Trump's planned meeting with Xi comes just days before a potential new tariff on Chinese goods goes into effect.
As of November 1st, China will have about 155% tariff put on it. And I don't think it's sustainable for them.
Trump says he wants to be nice to China.
But China's been very rough with us over the years because we had presidents that weren't smart from a business standpoint.
Trump also suggested yesterday that the meeting might not happen. An update on U.S.-Russia relations. President Trump said Tuesday he is holding off on plans to meet with President Putin in Hungary in the coming weeks.
No, I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens.
The decision to hold off on the meeting was made following a call earlier on Tuesday between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Trump says he has advocated for using the current battlefield lines as the basis of a peace deal.
The battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home and everybody takes some time off because you got two countries that are killing each other. Two countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week. So we'll see what happens.
And NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte is set to meet with Trump on Wednesday at the White House. Rutte made preparations to travel to Washington after Trump's meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky last week. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And besides President Trump, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer are also heading to Malaysia. They'll meet with their Chinese counterparts to discuss China's rare earth export controls. Here's Greer discussing those export curbs today on CNBC.
It was incredibly aggressive. It was totally disproportional to anything that the U.S., the EU, or Canada, or anybody did. Because remember, these are global measures that the Chinese have put in place to purport to control the movement or export of any item containing certain rare earths from one country to another, right? Even if China is not, one of the parties in the agreement.
Greer also said that China's measures violated a commitment that officials made months ago to keep supplying rare earth minerals. He also accused the Chinese regime of wanting to exert economic control over the world. Greer says the U.S. needs to rebalance trade with China after decades of very limited access to Chinese markets. But he noted there's still a good landing zone where the two countries can trade non-sensitive goods in a more balanced way. And Vice President J.D. Vance and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promoting the Gaza ceasefire today in Jerusalem. Vance acknowledged incidents of violence in recent days, but expressed confidence in the peace plan. Here's the Vice President.
It's not easy. I never said it was easy, but what I am is optimistic that the ceasefire is going to hold and that we can actually build a better future in the entire Middle East. But that requires some work. So it's not about monitoring in the sense of, you monitor a toddler. It's about monitoring in the sense that there's a lot of work, a lot of good people who are doing that work.
We're just creating an unbelievable day after with a completely new vision of how to have the civil government, how to have the security there, who could provide that security there, again with Israel taking care of overall security always. And we discussed that, and I think we have some very, very good ideas how to proceed. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's possible.
Vance also met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog as part of a number of high-level meetings in Israel. U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are with the vice president. Since the ceasefire began on October 10th, the remains of 15 hostages have been returned to Israel. Another 13 still need to be recovered and handed over, a key element of the agreement. Questions remain over the peace plan, including disarming the Hamas terror group, the deployment of an international security force in Gaza, and who will govern the territory. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio will travel to Israel to meet with Netanyahu on Friday. The Israeli government made the announcement today. We'll be keeping you updated on that visit. And Ukraine says Russia launched more than 400 drones and nearly 30 missiles in an overnight attack, killing 6 people. The air assault targeted its energy infrastructure. Is just the latest in Russia's effort to cripple the energy system before winter. In the Kyiv region, rescuers discovered the bodies of 3 people, including 2 children. It was after a strike set a private house ablaze. Officials say the victims were a woman and her 2 daughters, an infant of 6 months, and a 12-year-old girl. Ukraine says it downed 16 missiles and more than 330 drones, but other missiles hit targets directly. The attack on the Kyiv region and other cities came a day after President Trump put his planned meeting with Russia's leader Vladimir Putin on hold. Ukraine's President Zelensky said today that President Trump's call for Ukraine and Russia to stop at the current front lines was a good compromise.
Now to go to political decisions, peace negotiations, diplomatic way how to stop Putin. That's why we had the long conversation. After our conversation, you saw messages, public messages from Trump. He proposed stay where we stay and begin conversation. I think that was good compromise, but I'm not sure that Putin will support, and I said it to President.
The Ukrainian leader also discussed the overnight attack, saying a kindergarten in the city of Kharkiv was hit. Zelensky was speaking in Oslo before traveling on to Sweden. He'll discuss a possible export deal there with the Swedish Prime Minister at the Swedish defense industry group Saab. Saab is the maker of fighter jets, missile systems, anti-tank weapons, and other equipment. And Russia is carrying out a major training exercise involving nuclear weapons. Just yesterday, President Trump said plans for a second summit between him and Russian President Vladimir Putin are being put on hold. Today's drills included practice launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are capable of striking the United States. Putin emphasizes that the maneuvers have been planned in advance, but they came just hours after Trump said plans for a summit in Budapest are on hold. Trump says it's because he didn't want it to be a, quote, wasted meeting. Russia's officials agreed, but added that preparations for a summit continue. Throughout the war, Putin has frequently issued reminders of Russia's nuclear weapons as a warning signal to Ukraine and the West. NATO has also been conducting nuclear deterrence exercises this month. And President Trump is set to meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's in Washington today. This morning, Rutte had talks with 2 senators from each side of the aisle. Democratic Senator Jeanine Shaheen says Foreign Relations Committee advanced 3 bills regarding the Ukraine war just today. Here's the senator.
One would declare Russia a state sponsor of terrorism because of their kidnapping of Ukrainian children. And the second would allow us to move forward using the repossessed assets from Russia to support Ukraine in this war. And the third would be to take an effort at China to stop the war effort.
Rutte was asked if today's meeting indicates that Trump's talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday weren't successful. The NATO chief denied that idea, saying today's meeting was already planned before that. According to Rutte, he set up the talks after Trump managed to broker a ceasefire in Gaza. Trump today will mark the 4th time Rutte visits the White House since Trump returned to office. He's set to promote a 12-point peace plan during the meeting with Trump. The plan calls for a ceasefire based on current battle lines, the return of deported children, and a prisoner exchange. It also includes security guarantees for Ukraine, a war recovery fund, and a clear pathway for the Ukraine to join the European Union. And President Trump said that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has agreed to scale back India's imports of Russian oil. Trump said he spoke with Modi over the phone yesterday. He said the conversation was primarily focused on U.S.-India trade relations. Here's the president speaking to reporters in the Oval Office.
I spoke to Prime Minister Modi today, as I mentioned before, and we just have a very good relationship. And he's not going to buy much oil from Russia. He wants to see that war end as much as I do. He wants to see the war end with Russia, Ukraine. And as you know, they're not going to be buying too much oil. So they've cut it way back, and they're continuing to cut it way.
In a post on X, Modi thanked Trump for his warm greetings and the phone call. He didn't provide details about what was discussed during their call, though. Trump said over the weekend that the U.S. would maintain its, quote, massive tariffs on imports from India if it continues to buy Russian oil. Back in August, Trump imposed an additional 25% tariff on imports from India, bringing the total rate to 50%. India has become a major market for Russian oil as Russia faces sanctions from Western nations since its invasion of Ukraine. I'm Paul Grady, and this is World Watch. The Louvre Museum in Paris has reopened just days after crown jewels were stolen. The dramatic weekend heist was estimated at more than $100 million. Now 100 investigators are involved in the hunt for the suspects and gems after Sunday's theft from the world's most visited museum. Now, questions have arisen about security at the Louvre and whether security cameras may have failed. Thieves rode a basket lift up the Louvre's facade. They broke through an upstairs window, smashed display cases, and fled with priceless jewels. The thieves spent less than 4 minutes inside the museum and then escaped on motorbikes. Japan's new foreign minister said today that he's looking forward to President Trump's upcoming visit to Tokyo next week. It'll be the first time Trump meets with Japan's new Prime Minister, Sane Takaichi. Here's the foreign minister.
President Trump plans to visit Japan from October 27th to the 29th, and we welcome his visit. Regarding the meeting, the first for Prime Minister Takaichi, I hope it will be a good opportunity for the two leaders to build trust on a personal level, which would encourage them to discuss further strengthening of the Japan-U.S. alliance and to realize a free and open Indo-Pacific.
The foreign minister says he plans his country to demonstrate the determination to beef up its military defense amid growing tensions in the region. Takaichi today took office after being elected Japan's first female prime minister, and the new leader spent much of the past few weeks trying to build a coalition to push her nomination through. She'll have several diplomatic meetings within days of taking office, including the meeting with Trump and 2 regional summits. And Ukraine's State Security Service has unveiled an upgraded sea drone. It says the new drone can now operate anywhere in the Black Sea. Here's the details.
Ukraine's Security Service has unveiled an upgraded version of its Sea Baby naval drone. It says it can operate at distances of over 930 miles and carry a payload of up to 4,400 pounds, twice as much as before. Unmanned weapon systems are becoming increasingly vital in Ukraine's war against Russia as both sides compete to improve drone technology for land, air, and sea battles. Despite the spotlight on aerial drones, for the sheer numbers deployed and their destructive power, Ukraine's small, fast, unmanned boats have hit several Russian vessels in the Black Sea, driving the fleet from the Crimean Peninsula and far from Ukraine's coast. This helps keep Ukraine trade routes to Europe open. SBU Brigadier General Ivan Lukashevich told Reuters that Ukraine needs their commercial fleet to sail to keep the economy breathing and to prevent Russian influence. Ukraine's sea drones aren't just for one-time attacks. Some carry remote-controlled rocket launches and guns to target enemy operations. Since the war began in 2022, Ukraine's sea drones have hit 11 Russian ships. In June, they also attacked a key bridge connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland. firing torpedoes that damaged its underwater supports. Another objective of Ukraine's naval drone program is to develop machines that can intercept and destroy enemy drones. But Lukashevich added a cautionary note.
Russia is trying to copy Ukrainian naval drones and is already using them against the territory of Ukraine as much as possible.
Lukashevich also shared that Sea Baby drones are equipped with self-destruct systems to prevent Russia from seizing their technology. However, the primary goal is to bring drones back to Ukrainian shores for repeated use.
And as Beijing's top leadership convenes to map out plans for the next 5 years, petitioners, that's Chinese citizens demanding justice, have been flocking to Beijing to appeal to higher authorities. They form lines outside the agency responsible for hearing public complaints. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has the report.
Authorities have been trying to stop them and send them back. There are tens of thousands of them in China. Petitioners have usually suffered all kinds of mistreatment. One of them being local authorities demolishing their homes by force so that the local government can seize the homeowners' land and sell it for construction projects to make money. It's usually hard for petitioners to find justice through the legal system. And after failing to get justice at the local level, these people flock to Beijing every year to appeal to a higher authority. But they are often stopped halfway by officials or even get arrested for standing up for their rights. NTD spoke to a petitioner, and to protect his identity, we have distorted his voice.
The authorities are rogue. They just do whatever they want. The authorities have demolished some of the petitioners' homes. They've come here to appeal, but officials want to detain them.
And in other China news, more than 100 goats, gathered in front of a local government building in China's Shaanxi province. Their owner, surnamed Zhang, sent them there to protest.
I have a lot of goats, 150 of them. A few of them have died. I still have some more that aren't here yet.
Zhang is demanding a reasonable compensation from local officials. He doesn't have a place to keep his goats now. Construction from a state-owned company damaged a local watercourse, flooding his goat farm. As a result, Zhang only received less than $300 as compensation.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on NTD. And the Chinese Communist Party's grip on China is showing cracks. Tonight, NTD's Steve Vance sits down with Stephen Mosher, a renowned China scholar who's been decoding the Chinese Communist Party since the 1980s.
It makes no sense for Xi Jinping himself, who has only the support of his faction, to begin removing members of that faction. The only sector of the Chinese economy that actually works according to market principles is the export sector. The export sector only works because of access to the American market. The Chinese economy is in for some very, very dark days ahead. And I believe that the sooner the collapse comes, the sooner Xi Jinping will be forced to either step back to what he called the second line or to be forced out of power altogether.
Get the details tonight on Capital Report with Steve Vance at 7 p.m. Eastern.